This is our warehouse. Now most of our stuff doesn't come to this warehouse because we ship by the container load. So when we get clothes it's by the container load, when we get foods by the container load. So those go directly from wherever they are to whatever country we send them to. Here we prepare for hurricanes, which is a little late in the season now, so that's why it's so empty. Before hurricane season starts, we get blankets and hygiene kits, generators and that sort of stuff, and bring them here. And then we prepare the countries with some of it and keep some here. And then whenever something strikes, that same day we load up containers and send them down, to them. And we also bring any high-ticket item here, like for example, refrigerators, boat engines for our fishing villages, things that cost, computers, things that cost a lot of money and we can't afford to send a whole container to any one country. We bring it here, we break it down, and then send them the amount that they need from here. So it's 120,000 square feet, the total building, 30,000 warehouse, and 90,000 for office. And we have a little over 300 people here, and then we have a very important 85 other employees that live all over the U.S. Those are the priests who go every week, and they're retired priests, so some of them are quite aged. And they go every weekend to preach at the churches on our behalf. And now we need These are banana bark cards.
You can have them and they can take notes.
The banana bark cards, they're made in Haiti and they're one of our biggest appeals at Food for the Poor. They take the bark of the banana tree, which falls off naturally. No trees are harmed in doing this. And they cut it to the right shape, and then we send down the cards. Oops. We send down the cards without the banana bark on them and with stuff written and everything in the sign. And then they glue on the banana bark. They send it back to us. And then at Christmas, in the fall, we have a big mailing to our file, which gives us the largest % response of any other mailing, because not only are they giving money to the poor, but they know that they're also helping people to work down there and make a living. So it's kind of very appealing from that point of view. Child right here, he is from Guatemala, where 50% of the children, it's hard to say 50% because that includes all the wealthy and the middle class. Amongst the poor, about 90% of children are stunted because of malnutrition. It is the highest rate of stuntedness in the Western Hemisphere and the third or fourth highest in the world, depending on where it is right now. His name is Lester, and he was brought to one of our nutritional centers. When I say our, we support them with food and beds and things like that. And he was nursed back to life, and that's him about a year later. And that's what we were about, that sort of transformation, you know, that we see something like this where he almost looks like E.T., he almost looks inhuman, you know, the poverty has almost made him lose his humanity, you know, his human look. And, you know, look at what a beautiful child. Now he's about 9 years old, actually, and he is delightful.
How have you seen the organization impact people around the world?
Well, for example, in Haiti, when I started 13 and a half years ago, the death rate, the infant mortality rate, was 1 child out of every 8 would not live to see the age of 5. And we are the largest providers of aid in Haiti, so I think we have something to do if there's an improvement. And now it's 1 out of every 14, which is still a horrible statistic compared to first world, compared to the US, where it's probably 1 in every 1,000 or whatever. But it's less, you know, almost half of what it used to be. So we see that all the time. We also see it besides having studies of certain things when we build homes and we have a clinic and the health of the children and stuff like that, but we see it all the time anecdotally, like when we visit and we go and we see them living in that poverty, and then we build them houses and water wells, and we give them self-sustainable projects like rearing chickens or goats or pigs and stuff like that, and we go back a few months later, the whole community is much more empowered, and they have added a room to the home sometimes, or they're selling stuff on their verandas, and so we see that kind of activity all the time. The kids are going to school because we have built a school for them, and oftentimes they have also training. They use the community center as a center to train people to sew or to do other things that they can make them earn a living.
Does Food for the Poor help? Like you said, they help in, it says 17 countries.
Right.
Does Food for the Poor also help in like the local community?
We do if there is a traumatic situation or a very local. Like there's a charity called New Hope that helps migrant workers in this area, and we have given them a few containers of foods, canned foods, and cleaning liquids and things like that. Our main focus is on the 17 countries, but for example, when Katrina happened, we sent 220 containers filled with things. We asked them what they need first of all, because we don't want to send things that they don't want. And then we sent those to the areas that were receiving the displaced people from New Orleans. We sent those to the different communities around New Orleans that had people that they didn't have before. And then when 9/11 happened, we did the same. Like when we spoke to the firefighters and the policemen, they said that they were seeing such horrible things like body parts and stuff like that as they were digging through, that they didn't feel like eating a plate of spaghetti when they when they were finished with that. So we sent containers of like the nutriment, the supplemental type of drinks. We sent power bars and things like that they warehoused in New Jersey, and every day they'd bring over whatever they needed for that day.
Is there anything that people like that don't work for Food to the Poor can help?
Absolutely. I mean, we depend almost completely on people who don't work for Food for the Poor. Our donors, of course, support the charity with finances, with money, and with in-kind gifts. Our main gifts are in-kind. Like we send about $1 billion a year of aid to the countries. About 850 to 900 million of that is in-kind. And then we use the money to pay for the shipping and to build homes and to do water projects and things like that. But where volunteering is concerned, we really don't have a tremendous amount of things to do here because our work is outside. But we do have some volunteers when we have events, when we have the big galas and stuff like that, we have people helping out. Here, stuffing envelopes or unstuffing envelopes, as the case might be, but not a tremendous amount of volunteer opportunity here.
In the past few years, how has Food to the Poor become more up-to-date and more technologically advanced?
Well, two things. In the field, we have focused a lot more on self-sustainable projects. So before, where we started out really 32 years ago, just giving rice to missionaries in Jamaica, rice and beans, and that was a very small charity. Then it took us the first 20 years to make $1 billion in total of 20 years. Now we're doing it every year, so we have grown a lot. Now that growth necessitated certain growth in technology. The AS400 system I showed you upstairs, that's part of that technology, but we also now are able to do a lot of analytics that we weren't able to do before. With the advent of modeling, we can get variables of our donors. Like we can see, okay, our donors are usually around this age, live in this type of neighborhood, they have this type of life, because we get to know them because we speak to them on the phone. And then the analytics people can build a model, usually a firm outside because we don't have the capability here, will build a model using the variables of our donors. And when we overlay that on a list of new prospects, it'll pull out the ones that are most likely to respond positively to us. So it has two functions. It saves us money in not mailing out things to people who would not respond. And it also saves people the aggravation of receiving something that they didn't really want to receive. And then it gives us a better response rate when we center into people that are more likely to give. I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
It's a garbage dump story. And my second year here, I took a bunch of priests. What do you call a bunch of priests? Not a gaggle. It's anyway, a group of priests. I took a group of priests who were speakers for us. We take them every year to the countries, at least once a year. There are 85 of them, so we divide them into 3 groups, and some go to maybe Guatemala, some to Haiti, some to Jamaica, Nicaragua, and so forth. So every year we go, and I had gone with them, and that was my first time ever having the garbage dump experience in Nicaragua. This garbage dump was called La Churreca, and one of the advocacy organizations had named it one of the 10 horrors of the modern world. When we drove in there in our air-conditioned bus, it looked like that, like the picture behind you. You saw the smoke from the burning garbage. There were thousands of flies. There were hundreds of vultures, and then there were pigs and goats and stuff. Unfortunately, there were about 300 to 500 people who went there every day from early morning until late evening to scavenge for food or anything else they might be able to use, like clothing, and also to find recyclables to sell them to the trucks that come in at the end of the day. The bus driver said, "Don't go out because the stench is horrible out there, and you shouldn't." And I said, "No, I don't want to just look as if we're in a zoo or something. I want to go out and speak to someone." So I went out, and the stench was horrendous. I mean, I can't remember. I have no memory of ever throwing up in my life. But when I got off the bus, I honestly felt like if I was going, I said, "Please, Lord, don't let me do this in front of all these priests that I'm supposed to be leading in this experience." So God was good to me, and I didn't. And after a while, I couldn't smell anything, which is how beautifully engineered the body is. And so I found the person that I thought was the oldest in the group. I thought he was 75 years old. And actually, when I asked him his age, he was exactly my age at that time, 52. So it was 11 years ago. And I was shocked at how old he looked. And I asked him how long he had been working in a place like this. And he said he had been working there for 40 years, from he was 12 years old. And I just was shocked that someone could work in a place that was so deadening to the spirit like that. I mean, you had to speak like this because the flies would get in your mouth if you opened your mouth when you spoke. Most of the people there had like a t-shirt or a towel around their face so that they wouldn't breathe, the flies in. And I asked him how much he made in a day. He said on a good day, he would make the equivalent of $3 a day. And I said, "How long is that?" He said, "About 10 hours. And he says he comes there when it's a little bit dark, and he leaves when it's a little dark because the trucks come in at the end of the day to buy the recycled stuff." And I said, "What's a bad day?" He said, "Well, if it rains, if the garbage gets compacted, if the truck drivers take out the bigger pieces of recyclable stuff before they get to the dump and sell it themselves." So I said, "How much do you make then?" He said, "Less than $1 for the day." And I thought, wow. And then I asked him, "What are your thoughts for the future?" And he said to me something that really broke my heart. He said, "Yo he perdido la capacidad de soñar." I have lost the capacity to dream. And I was heartbroken by this because I was his age and I had so many dreams for myself. And I had so many dreams for my child then, and I only had one at that time, and I had so many dreams for my grandchildren. Well, no, actually I had all my children by then. This was one grandchild that I had. And so I thought to myself, this is really horrible. I thought of the scripture that says, "Without a dream, the people will perish." And I thought, this man is truly like the walking dead. He's functioning, but he's no longer alive. And I went back to my hotel and I cried. I'm an easy crier. I cried myself to sleep. And next morning I woke up feeling so energized. And I came back home. I called a staff meeting and I said to them, we can no longer think of ourselves as providers of food and providers of housing and providers of clean water and clothing and medical and education and self-sustainable projects. We are providers of dreams. And it so energized me that I never feel tired. I can work 14 hours in a day and 16 hours in a day and not feel fatigue because it elevated the mission from delivering food and water to delivering dreams. And that is so in the image and likeness of God for me that I think, my gosh, it's so exciting to work in a dream machine. It's kind of almost like a sci-fi thing. So I realized then that our purpose was to bring people who were like that man, pretty much at the edge of despair, and bringing back into the life of the life of dreamers. And that's a story that most has affected me. Even though I have told it a million times, I still feel like crying now as I'm saying it, because it really did upset me so much. Mm-hmm. But that's our transformation. We're transforming people every day.